I normally do, but if I whistle with this thing, you guys are going to hate me. I do. I normally do that, but I don't.
On our format, we're going to do everything we can to get through the doctor's opinion tonight and start fresh tomorrow with Bill's story. There should be no reason why we won't get through. We may run a little more than 9 o'clock tonight, but if you got a pill to take or something, please don't share with your friends, okay? We're going to jump into the forward of the third edition. You can find that on XXII, 21 Roman numerals. By March 1976, when this edition went to the printer, the total worldwide membership of Alcoholics Anonymous was conservatively estimated at more than 1 million, with almost 28,000 groups meeting in over 90 countries. Surveys of the groups in the United States and Canada indicated that AA is reaching out, not only to more and more people, but to a wider and wider range. Women now make up more than a quarter of the membership. Among newer memberships, the proportion is nearly 1/3. 7% of AA survey are less than 30 years of age, among them many in their teens. The basic principles of the AA program, it appears, to hold good for individuals with many different lifestyles, just as the program has brought recovery to those of many different nationalities. The 12 steps that summarize the program may be called Los Dos Pesos in one country, Les Dos Este in another, but they trace exactly the same path to recovery that was blazed by the earliest members of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Guys, what they're saying there, they said the 12 steps that summarize the program. I'm going to say something very blasphemous. I don't know about in your meetings out here, but in most meetings back home, they got those 12 steps hanging on the wall, like a shade. Y'all got those out here? Best thing that ever happened to AA. But you know those 12 steps that look like a shade that hang on the walls of AA meetings? Worst thing that ever happened to AA. Why do I say that? Because knuckleheads like Larry Scott and Charlie Yao walk in, we're snaking and shaking, and we look up there. We're not listening to anything that's being said, whether it's a speaker or whatever the deal, and we're picking and choosing. That's a Santa Claus list. The first one I get, because I'm here, my butt's pretty much kicked. I'm desperate. I ain't hopeless. 2, I believe he's there, but I don't think he wants anything to do with me because I've been a bad guy. I've hurt a lot of his kids. 3, are you kidding me? I've been a self-sufficient man all my life. I don't need nobody running my life. 4, get out of here. 5, forget about it. 8, you kidding me? 9, I'm going behind the wall with this stuff. So in my home group, we voted that we don't hang those on the wall because they're a summary, and here's your definition of summary. It's a condensed statement of substance of principal points of a much larger work. So if you want to know how to take the steps, it's in that old ugly book in your lap. I have people come to me. I had a guy come to me some weeks ago, and he says, I took the steps out of the 12 and 12. I said, really? If you would do me a favor, I'll give you a day. I'd just like you to show me the clear-cut directions in there because they're not there. Nothing wrong with the book, but there's no instruction on how to take the steps. So when you see those steps on the wall, they're but a summary. And we're going to expound on that greatly when we get into action in Step 10. Step 10 is so much more than making amends when we're wrong. It's way more than that.
Absolutely.
Forward to the 4th.
Yeah, the summarize is just what I try to get through school with. Cliff notes. That's all they are, just cliff notes, you know. While the forward to the 4th edition, the last paragraph in it. While our literature has preserved the integrity of the AA message, sweeping changes in society as a whole are reflected in new customs and practices within the fellowship. Taking advantage of technological advances, for example, AA members with computers can participate in meetings online, sharing with fellow alcoholics across the country or around the world. In many meetings, anywhere, AA share experience, strength, and hope with each other in order to stay sober and to help other alcoholics. Modem to modem or face to face, AA speak the language of the heart in all its power and simplicity.
So there we go. I had someone recently down in Australia ask me where they could find online meetings or online chat rooms. I don't know anything about those. But, you know, there are people. There's a gal named Carlene Norman down in the Outback, and she's a little Aboriginal woman. She runs the central office in that area, the central office in that area, and God bless her. She's in the trenches and on the front lines, and she's being, like you were saying, Charlotte, I mean, she takes hits, big hits, for being a thumper. I mean, if you're a big book thumper, you're under criticism and under fire. It's not a popularity contest. But God bless you if you are. We're going to talk about Dr. William Duncan Silkworth, the little doctor that loved drunks. I alluded earlier that he went completely broke in 1929 in the Great Stock Crash. And he went over to Charles Towns Hospital there in New York City and started the study of alcoholism and drug addiction. And when they were writing this book, they needed something with depth and weight to give it to society, because make no mistake, the book in your lap is nothing more than a sales pitch. That's all it is. It's a sales pitch to us that there's a solution. It's a sales pitch to society that we're really not moral rejects. It's a sales pitch to the medical fraternity, to the clergy. It's a sales pitch. And in order to give it depth and weight and meaning, they went to this guy that's not an alcoholic, that understood us, that came up with the disease concept and said, Doc, would you help us out here? If we put this in here, you're a noted guy, maybe they'll give us a little more credence. And again, Dr. Silkworth had a theory. He had a theory that once we started thinking about drinking, we couldn't stop that thought process. And once we poured alcohol of any type or any amount in our system, it set into motion the allergy of the body. He called it the phenomenon of craving. Phenomenon is like miracle. It's something that cannot be explained. I don't know why. Now, there's a theory that we don't metabolize alcohol like other people. And and we all know that. But he said, okay, I'll do that for you. And here we go.
We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of a plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from the medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. Now, a well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. To whom it may concern.
One little note that I'd like to make. Again, he had a theory. It wasn't until 1957 that the American Medical Association deemed alcoholism as a disease, and they called it a highly complex disease. And at that point, once they accepted that as a disease, then your Blue Cross Blue Shield card became valid at a hospital. You know, back home, when you have got low moral fiber, they'll call you sorry. You're just sorry. You ain't no good. You ain't never going to measure up. And what I challenge my people back home to do is walk up to the ER up at Northside Hospital and flop down your insurance card, and the nurse is going to say, what's the matter with you? And you can say, well, I'm just sorry. I'm no good and I don't measure up. And they'll say, get the hell out of here. We don't treat sorry. But if you say, I can't drink, I can't quit drinking, they'll swipe your card and put you in a room, and they'll begin the detoxification process. So in 1957, AMA signed on and said, yes, this is a highly complex disease, and it's called alcoholism.
And Bill penned most of the book. Now, there was a lot of critique into it, and a lot of people had input in the writing of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill was at Towns Hospital 4 different occasions. His first trip was in September of 1933. If you want to write this down, we'll cover it in doctor's opinion and in Bill's story. First trip was September 1933. His second trip was June 7th, 1934. His third trip was September the 17th, 1934. And then his final trip was December the 11th, 1934. So in a year and 14 months, Bill went to treatment 4 times. Now, Dr. Bob Smith in that year had been about 12 times. So, it don't always take. And I totally relate with relapse. When I hear guys talk about I relapsed for 20 years until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I totally understand what relapse means. But when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, there was some people who took me by the hand and said, "There's a way out of this, Charlie boy. You go where we go, you do what we do, and you don't ever have to take another drink again." They were honest with me, and that's what helped me. So,
and the other thing about this story, we're talking about giving this book depth and weight. It's an unbiased opinion because he's not alcoholic. He's a medical doctor.
To whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity,
Bill Wilson,
was an alcoholic of the type I came to regard as hopeless.
He was no wiggle room left.
In the course of Bill's third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery.
This is when Ebby visited him and told him about the religious or the spiritual concept and the practical program of action.
Now, as part of Bill's rehabilitation, he commenced to present his concepts to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become a basis of a rapidly growing fellowship with these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered.
There's a point that, and there's nothing about this that'll keep you sober for a second, but when they were writing this book, 37 to 39, there was estimated between 15 and 40 people on the planet. And at the time that it was published, there really was. What's going on here? There you go. Thank you. It was that there were 100 at least, but while they were writing it, they couldn't go to the publisher and say, "There's 15 of us that aren't drinking. Would you publish this book?" And remember the size of it? They'd say, "Get the hell out of my office." But 100, we got something to talk about.
Yeah. And all this is just an endorsement from a non-alcoholic who knows what an alcoholic really is and what he does. I personally know scores of cases who are of the type of whom other methods have failed completely. Now, these facts appear to be of an extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibility of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism.
Annals are historical records.
These men may have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves.
So if I come up to you in the break and I go and I start talking about Joanne, this is my second time being around that lovely lady, but I don't know anything about her. I don't know her last name. I don't know what she does for a living. I just know she's a little soldier in the trenches and on the front lines carrying the message. That's all I know about her. But if I start talking to you about Joanne, take it with a grain of salt because I don't know her. Now, if I start talking to you on the break like we had a little come to Jesus back here by the coffee pot a while ago about how not to drink whiskey and to carry this message, you can rely absolutely on what I tell you about it because it's my experience. It's not what I think. It's not a theory. It's my experience of 24 plus years. This works. There's a man sitting here in the front row with 37 years. I watched him pick up his chip down in Southern California recently, and he's here. We had a cat. I love this. I love to tell this story. The cat that invited us to present up in Akron, Ohio, he is the archivist for Dr. Bob's house, Ray Grumney. And Ray's got one of them big books, the one that's got the 3 autographs in it. He's also head of the board of directors, and he penned a lot of stuff that we're going to cover this weekend. And Mr. Ray sat on the front row in Akron, Ohio. Mr. Ray walked in with a brand new 4th edition and never been opened. He had a stack of pens and highlighters. Mr. Ray sat right there where my buddy Sam is sitting. And he was writing, and he was highlighting, and he'd stop us. He said, "Hang on a minute. I'm old, I can't," and he's old. He's like 90. And he asked more questions than anybody in the room. He's got what I want. I want that fire, and I want that enthusiasm. When I get 37 years, like Sam's my hero, man. I want to be sitting on the front row of a book study. I want to learn something. That's what this is about, man. So you can rely absolutely on anything I say about myself or what Charlie says about himself, and I know what you rely absolutely on anything you listen to from Sam. Make sense?
Regarding recovery, that's what we're talking about. Recovery from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body.
And when he signed this, he had a theory. And he's already treated this whack job Bill Wilson 4 times. He had a theory, and they asked him to sign that book. And in the original 1st edition, that's the way his signature appeared. Yours, very, very truly yours, ... MD. He wasn't so damn sure this thing was going to work. And in subsequent printings, he finally signed it the way that it is in your book, but he actually signed some of the later 1st editions.
The physician who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in other statement which follows. See, it was 2 years in writing the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That was the first letter that Dr. Silkworth endorsed Alcoholics Anonymous when there was about 50 or 60 people. Now it's getting ready to go to print. They asked for another endorsement, and he's seeing the results. He's seeing the results at Town Hospital because Bill Wilson has been sober about 3 or 4 years, and he was such a good patient at Towns. That's where he was sending all his business. So Bill would get these drunks off the street and dump them at Towns Hospital. So this is the second letter Dr. Silkworth writes. In this statement, he confirms that we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind.
So they're talking about the obsession and the allergy.
It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we're in full flight of reality, or were outright mental defectives. You want to do Proverbs?
Go ahead, finish that paragraph, please.
These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent to some of us. But we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete.
You know, this book that we're studying, the only thing that it deals with, the only component of the disease is the mind, the greater aspect. Because without this, I don't drink. If you call me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you got a thick tongue because you've been sucking on the bottle, I'm going to hang up because I got nothing for you. I can't win with you. When you get sober and you're beaten into a state of reasonableness, and we got something to work with. The book doesn't deal with the allergy of the body. It tells us that we got it. What we have to treat is this thing that tells me I'm not different. I'm not maladjusted to life. And what we've done is we've traced it back, far back as we can go to the other big book, alcoholism. And if you want to write this down, you can find this in Proverbs 23, verses 29 through 35. And here's what it says. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights, and your mind will imagine confusing things. Funny thing about that line, as we travel around, we typically do it in a church like this, and we'll go hunt down a Bible. And my favorite one that we found so far is the Billy Graham Crusader version, and it says, your eyes will behold strange women, and they still do. You'll be like the one sleeping on the high seas, lying on top of the rigging, on top of the masts. They hit me, you will say, but I'm not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can find another drink? Sounds like alcoholism, doesn't it?
You know, the first letter that was printed, they're trying to sell this book to the public. I mean, anybody that'll pick it up and read it. And this second letter, Bill is writing about to the fellowship, to other alcoholics, so they can carry the message. Yes, sir.
Which Proverbs was that?
Proverbs 29, verses 23 through 35. Is that what I said?
23, Proverbs 23, verses 29 through 35.
There you go.
Dr. Silsworth's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As a layman is someone that is not of a stated professionalism, but has experience in whatever we're talking about. Our opinion is that its soundness may, of course, mean little, but as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. Now, it explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. Though we work out our solution on a spiritual as well as an altruistic plane,
Second part of the puzzle and the third part of the puzzle.
we favor alcoholism for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged.
In the early days, you couldn't come into the rooms until you had been put into a hospital for a detoxification. I think Clarence Snyder, and I'm guessing at this is my opinion, Clarence Snyder was the first one where that was waived. I'm not positive of that, but I believe that to be true. We can find it in Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers.
Did you say we favor alcoholism or
Hospitalization.
More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he has then a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. So Bill gives Dr. Silkworth and treatment a plug. You know, why not? He went 4 times. So the doctor writes, the subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction.
The subject presented in this book is the precise method of recovery.
Now, I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on the subject which is covered in such masterfully detailed in these pages. Now, we doctors have realized for a long time that some sort of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics.
But
its application presented difficulties beyond our conception.
what Dr. Silkworth is doing right here, I mean, he had some balls here when he wrote this. He is throwing himself under the bus. He says, all I've got is synthetic knowledge. I've been taught out of a book. I have no idea the torture and the mistreatment that these men and women have been put through.
Because with our ultra-modern standards or scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge.
All right, we're talking about 1937, 38 when he's writing this, and the ultra-modern standards and scientific approach. Back then, they tried a number of things on us. I alluded to lobotomies and shock treatments and all these different things, but my favorite was hydrotherapy. At these spin dries, they would take you in these jitter joints, and they'd have a room that was tile walls, ceilings, and floors. It was a long room, and it had alternating hot and cold shower heads. And they'd take a drunk and strap him down buck naked to a gurney and run him down through them hot and cold shower heads hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. And at the end of it, what you got was a real clean drunk. Didn't do a damn thing for his drinking. But, you know, they tried everything. Clancy told a story one time he did a talk, the disease of perception in Atlanta at a conference. And he talked about this guy. He went to one of these jitter joints. And it was they had a day room where you kind of do that Thorazine shuffle. And they had a bar setting up over in the corner. It had all this different kinds of whiskey. The guy's in there for alcoholism. He said, "What is that?" One of his inmate buddies said, "Well, you can go over and get anything you want to drink. All you got to do is belly up to the bar and just tell them what you want to drink." He said, "Really? I could sure use a drink." And he bellied up to the bar and he said, "I believe I'll have a shot of Jack Daniels on the rocks." Bartender said, "No problem." He took that bottle and the guy picked up that rocks glass and it had a wire attached to the bottom of it. I said, "Well, I don't know what this is, but it can't hurt." He popped it and everything went well. And he said, Bartender said, "How about another one?" He said, "Yes, sir, I'll have another one just the same." He picked it up, and by the time he got it to his lips, that bartender hit a button underneath there, and it knocked that fool across the room. I don't believe that'd stop me. I can beat the odds on that deal. You know what I'm saying? But they tried everything back in the day. That synthetic knowledge, ultra-modern approach.
Yeah, that electricity shot did real well until visiting day, and one of them got them to bring a straw in. They were good after that. But in that last sentence, Dr. Silkworth, he alluded to the powers of good. And what he's talking about is something beyond human aid. He's talking about a spiritual awakening. But he couldn't come right out and say it. And then he talks about it synthetic. That's out of a book. That's all. That's the man went to school. He's got master's degrees and doctorate degrees and all these things and all these letters.
He's a brain surgeon.
All these letters behind his name. But he's sitting there telling, he said, all these years of research, I can't cure you. I can't cure you, Now, many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, Bill acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. Now, later, Bill said he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgivings, we consented.
Can you imagine? Bill Wilson's been in there 4 times. He's just run into a light pole out on the sidewalk and got a concussion. He's slipping in and out of delirium tremens, and he wants to walk up and down the hallways and talk to these other patients. Silkworth says with some misgiving. Now, can you imagine him trying to sell that concept to the panel of doctors in that long conference table room? They said, "Have you lost your mind, Silky?"
Now, the cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. Now, they believe in themselves and still more into the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death.
In my book, I underline the word unselfishness because, again, later in the book, they're going to say selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our problems.
Now, of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed of his physical cravings for liquor, and this often requires definite hospital procedures before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. Now, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic or habitual alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, and the phenomenon of craving is limited to these cases and never occurs in the average temperate drinker.
What Dr. Silkworth is saying is that normal people react differently. I'm a single man, and I love to ride motorcycles. I know you'd never know that by looking at me. And summer before last, I was dating this cute little old girl, Debbie, and We were out on a Sunday ride on the Harley, and we stopped at this modern Mexican place, had a upstairs patio, and the guy was up there playing music, and we stopped to get a taco or whatever. She says, I know you're in A&A. Do you mind if I have a cocktail, if I have a margarita? I said, not at all. I've got to observe this because she may be my future ex-wife. I've got to see how she drinks. So this is exactly what happened. You can't make this stuff up. Bartender says, what can I get you? Would you like a drink before dinner or lunch? And he said, I would. I'd love to have a margarita. He said, would you like that up or on the rocks? She said, I believe I'll have it on the rocks. And right then I knew there was something wrong with this because that ice takes up way too much room. And she gave him these directions. She said, please don't make it too strong. And I'm thinking to myself, you ain't never going to make it in our little club drinking like that. Well, they brought it, and he set it down. And she licked that salt, a little bit of salt off the rim, and she poured a sip of it into her mouth, and she all but screamed. And she says, this is way too strong. You're going to have to dilute this down. And I'm going, oh, God. But still, I'm watching that drink, and we got the tacos, and we eat our lunch, and I'm watching that drink, and it's only down about that far. And we sitting there talking, and the bill comes, and I'm looking at the drink, and all of a sudden, the ice is melted, and there's that layer of water laying up on top of that drink. And it's time to go back and get on the motorcycle and head back out on a ride. And I said, Debbie, are you going to finish that? She says, oh, no, I'm beginning to feel a little woozy. That's alcohol abuse. I don't know how people do that. I went over to her house one night, and she had a bottle of something, I don't know, liquor or wine, and we were talking, and she saw my eye catch that bottle, and she says, you know, somebody gave me that Christmas 2 years ago. Alcohol affects normal people differently. It just affects us differently, and I don't understand it. It just so far beyond me.
And this, again, I think this is very important that he talks about the manifestation of the allergy, that exaggerated reaction, the phenomenon of craving, that intensive wanting, and it's only limited to us, our class, which never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Now, these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit,
that's the allergy,
found they cannot break it. Once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve.
And in your book, you might want to highlight that word phenomenon, because it's something that is just foreign. It's kind of like that woman, the way she treated that margarita is a phenomenon to me. I don't understand it. Those dots don't connect. And it didn't connect with him, but he had this theory.
Now, frothy or agitated emotional appeal seldom suffices.
Frothy emotional appeal. Larry, if you come home drinking like that, I'm taking the dogs and I'm leaving. Larry, if you come back to work tomorrow with liquor on your breath, you're fired. Mr. Scott, if I see you in my courtroom again for driving an automobile while under the influence, you're going behind the wall for 90 days. You threaten me, all you do is give me a reason to drink you away. I can put you where you belong for a minute. Frothy emotional appeal. We don't even tap the brake at a warning. We don't even tap the brake, man. So Dr. Silkworth recognized that. He says frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices.
The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight.
That's what happened when Ebby Thatcher walked into Bill's kitchen, 182 Clinton Street.
It's our experience, not what we've learned out of the book. In nearly all cases, their ideas must be grounded in a power greater than themselves.
If
they are to recreate their lives. If any If any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics will appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become part of their daily work, and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel, after many years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them.
In my book, that whole last sentence is highlighted because here's a medical doctor that's identified the disease concept, and he's saying there's nothing on the planet Earth that's more effective than this altruistic movement amongst these people. And this next paragraph is, in my book, it's bracketed, highlighted, circled, underlined. I mean, it's one of the most powerful paragraphs in the book. And it says that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. In our path, we've run into people that say, I love a single malt scotch. I like a good box of wine. I hate the way that Jack Daniels tastes, but I believe I'll have one if you got one. I don't like the way that I react to tequila when it gets in my system because I go crazy as hell. But if that's what you got, I'm in. I don't care what it is. I want to get from right here, right now, to that place, and I don't care what the vehicle is. There's a place back in Atlanta called Po Folks. Y'all know about Po Folks? They pride themselves in two things. The first one is incredible Southern fried chicken. They don't have it just sitting around a rack. You have to order it, and they'll fix it to your order, and it'll knock you out. But the other one is good, strong, sweet Southern iced tea. I grew up on that. Rotted my teeth out, it was so sweet. But never have I gone to Po Folks at 7 o'clock in the morning when the cooks are in there prepping for the lunch. You go around back and they got that kitchen door propped up with the bread crates. Go up and go, excuse me, I know it's 7 o'clock in the morning, but could I come in and get a big old glass of that sweet Southern iced tea? And have them pour me a glass of it. You walk into the dining room and here's all these chairs up on the tables with the smell of pine sol and bleach. Take a chair down off the table and sit there and drink sweet Southern iced tea until they throw my ass out about 11 o'clock at night. Never happened. Carlos McGee's in Atlanta. I've been thrown out many a night after arriving there before they opened and drinking all day and all night. And it, being thrown out and sleeping in the parking lot. Happens all the time. How many of you guys remember your first drink? Okay. How many of you remember your first Coca-Cola? See? It's a whole different deal. I like what alcohol does for me and does to me. I don't like where I ended up because of it, but it never was about the taste. I had some favorite things, but at the end, you don't get them favorite things.
And it's not always about just getting loaded. The last few years of my drinking, I was this restless, irritable, and discontented person. And I'm this stone cold sober. And the reason I drank, the effect I wanted, if I could get to that point where I just don't care. Because alcohol did not take my conscience away from me. And it would not stop the voices. The voices never stop for me. The only time the voices stop in me is when I'm really paying attention to you and you're sharing the solution. You can stop the voices for a little while. And if I could get to that point, if I could drink just enough where I just didn't care. Yeah, I know I got another court date. Yeah, I know I'm on my last leg. Yeah, I know I'm broke. Yeah, I know all these things. I know I promised I was going to be at that kid's ball game. And I meant to be there. God, I meant to be there. I was going to be there. And it's eating my lunch. But the only way I can stop that voice is to have a few drinks. So it's not about getting drunk all the time. It's about stopping the voices. Get me to that point where I don't care. I'll care tomorrow. I know I will. But I can't stand it right now. That's my experience. I don't know if anybody in here can relate to that or not. But when we're sitting here talking about the untreated alcoholism, we're not just sitting around talking about being blind, running, knee-walking drunk all the time. You know, we might be normal in every respect, but when it comes to alcohol, we're strangely insane. Why in the world is this going to be different this time? Well, the voices say it will, Charlie. This time it'll be different. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the truth from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one.
And what do we drink?
Because we are restless, irritable, and discontent unless we can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others take with impunity.
Guys, the first personal promise that Charlie and I will give you this weekend, it says we're looking to experience the sense of ease and comfort. If you make the highlights, not particularly the ones that we suggest, the ones that jump out to you, you make the notes. You can summon, this is a promise, that sense of ease and comfort at any given moment. Because what happens somewhere between step 2 and step 7, your Creator shows up. That's a promise. And if you do this work, the only reason you'll ever drink again is because you want to. The only reason you will ever drink or use again is because you want to. That's a promise. It's my experience. I'm not a treatment center guy. We're just a couple of street drunks that found the solution through you. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with spin dries and jitter joints. They do a great job for getting us stable and putting us into the hands of people like Randy and Joanne and Tyler and Sam, Charlotte, because we are people with a real solution. So that sense of ease and comfort that we seek as human beings can be summoned at any given moment through the exercise of taking these steps.
Dr. Stillforth reiterates we're going to talk about the puzzle again right quick. And he's going to share with us again exactly what he's talking about. After they have succumbed to the desire again. So that obsession is nothing but a thought. That's all it is. It's just a thought. And there's nothing medically or clinically man has found yet to remove a thought. How do you remove a thought medically? Less the lobotomy, I guess, but...
Thorazine will shut it down for a minute.
Well, yeah. But Thorazine will make you thirsty after a while. Now, after they succumb to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops...
See, Phil Silkworth goes back to that word. He doesn't understand it. It's a phenomenon.
Yeah. So this thought is eating my lunch. And the only way to shut the voice is to give in to it. So I take a drink. Once I take a drink, then the phenomenon of craving, in other words, a compulsion sets in, which is a physical reaction beyond mental control. It's just like me saying, I tell you what, guys, until we stop tonight, let's nobody blink their eyes. We're blinking our eyes while we're saying it. There is no willpower strong enough to make me not blink my eyes. All the self-knowledge I have after 62 years on this earth cannot make me not blink my eyes. It's been 18 years since I've had a drink of liquor. If I drink tonight, there's nothing, and I know this book inside and out. None of my self-knowledge, none of my willpower will make me not drink more. I cannot control it. I have lost the power of choice. And we're going to talk about that over and over. But this is what Dr. Silkworth is telling drunks like me. I passed through a well-known stage of sprees, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again.
And let me tell you how I'm going to do that.
Well, this is how. It's repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's little hope for his recovery.
There's a promise.
That psychic change. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, in other words, non-alcoholics,
And here comes another promise.
once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol.
Obsession of the mind.
Now, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules.
12 steps.
What are the few simple rules in a nutshell? Trust God, clean house, and help others.
Y'all have any questions on what we've covered tonight? Comments? Eggs to throw? We will see you in the morning at 9 o'clock.
We will start with our co-founder's story.
You guys want to circle up and let God send us out?